Hey everybody and welcome. Ready for a deep dive into some PowerBASIC?
Always. We're getting into string variables today, right?
You know it. I think this will be perfect for anyone listening who's just starting to learn about coding. Like, how does your code actually handle text? Well, today's all about these string variables. They're behind pretty much all of it.
Yeah, and more exciting than they might seem at first. It's honestly the core stuff for almost any program. I mean, what program doesn't work with text in some way?
So true. The source material we're looking at today is a beginner coding tutorial video all about string variables in PowerBASIC. And what are we hoping to accomplish today?
We want to make sure that by the end of this deep dive, you understand exactly how to use these things like a pro, but also like, why do they even matter? And what even are they?
Totally. No point in just knowing the what if you don't know the why. So one of the first things our source material talks about is that variables are containers for information. I mean, I get the general idea, but it's a little abstract.
It's like, okay, imagine you have a bunch of boxes. And like any good boxes, they have labels on them.
Right, so you know what's in them.
Exactly. So that box is your variable. The label is its name. And inside, you've got information. But instead of like storing cookies or something.
Which would be nice.
Right. But you're storing data that the computer can actually use.
Okay, so we can change up what's in the box whenever we want. We can even get rid of boxes if we need to.
Yeah. Variables give you total control. Create them, you get rid of them, change what's inside. It all comes down to having a flexible way of managing information that your program uses.
That's super helpful. So we're focusing on string variables today, which means we're specifically talking about text, right?
Yeah.
But why are strings so important?
I mean, think about all the things that use text when you're on a computer. Usernames, descriptions of things you buy online, just messages that pop up on your screen, all of that stuff. It's all strings at the most basic level.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So our source material uses this str prefix a lot when it names string variables. Is that just like a style thing or what?
Oh no, there's a reason for that. Good naming conventions, like using that str prefix, it's like having road signs in your code. You know right away what type of variable you're looking at, which is a lifesaver when you have tons of code.
So it's less about the computer needing it and more about us humans needing it, right?
Yeah.
Right. Think about it. If you labeled all the containers in your kitchen, container 1, container 2, how long would it take you to find the coffee in the morning?
Too long.
Exactly. Good labels just make life easier.
True. And on that note, our source material mentions these global and local variables. And the analogy it uses is billboard versus notes on your duck. What's that all about?
Okay, so a global variable is like that billboard that everyone in the city can see. No matter where you are in your program, you can see and use those global variables.
Makes sense.
Local variables, on the other hand, are like those notes on your desk. Only you can see them, or in this case, only a specific part of your code can use them.
So it's like we're controlling who has access to what information at what time.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you don't want your grocery list ending up in your work presentation.
Exactly. So something else our source material talks about is this thing called a dim all statement. It sounds kind of formal for a programming language.
It does sound a bit formal, right? But it's really there to help you out. Dim all basically tells PowerBASIC that you want it to be super strict about how you use your variables.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it makes you define every single variable before you can even use it. You have to declare them.
So it's like saying, I have to tell you exactly what this word means before I use it in a sentence.
Yeah. It might seem kind of strict at first, but when your programs start to get more complicated, it'll really save you a lot of time and prevent errors.
Right, so you don't end up with a bunch of undefined things floating around. Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually get information from a user? So far, we've only talked about storing text in these string variables. But how do we fill them with something in the first place? The source material I sent you mentioned something called an input box command.
Oh, yeah. The input box is basically how you have a conversation with the user. It's like, you know how a program might pop up a little box and ask you a question?
Yeah, like what's your name or something.
Exactly. It's asking for some input on whatever the user types in that box.
Gets stored in a string variable.
Yes, that easy. You can take that information and then use it to make a program more personalized or make different things happen within a program.
Oh, cool. So using our box analogy from before, input box is like adding a little slot to our boxes so that other people can drop stuff in.
I love that. Yeah. And it shows why string variables are so powerful. It's not just about storing the actual text itself, but using them to make your programs interactive.
Okay, so we can get user input. We can store that input in these string variables.
Hmm.
Then what? Like,
Mhm.
how does this all actually work in a real program?
Well, the coding tutorial you sent actually has a great example of this. It's really simple, but it kind of ties everything together. So they make this program that uses that input box command we were talking about, and it asks the user for their name.
Okay, so like, welcome to my program. What's your name?
Right. And once the user types in their name, it gets stored in a string variable. We can call it username for this example. And then the program uses another command to write a message to the screen. But this time it uses the username variable.
So instead of just a general hello there,
Yeah.
it could be like, hello, username.
Yeah, it makes it way more personal. And that's such a basic example, but it shows you how powerful this stuff is. Taking input, storing it, making a more dynamic
I
program.
like it. And I bet you could get even more creative with it. Like
Yeah,
imagine you have a program and it asks your favorite color and then changes the background to that color.
exactly. Or even a video game where it takes your name and uses it for your character or something. There's so much you can do.
That's really cool. We
Yeah.
we started with these variables being like labeled boxes, which seemed kind of basic at first, but now it's like, wow, you can use these string variables to make some really cool interactive stuff.
Yeah, it's all about the fundamentals. And once you really get them, you can see how it all fits together.
So for our listeners out there, maybe just starting out with Power Basic or even just curious about coding in general, what's like the one big takeaway from today?
Don't underestimate string variables, I guess. They seem simple, but they really are the foundation of so much of this.
I love it. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into Power Basic and string variables. We learned what they are, why they're important, even how to use them to make your programs way more interactive.
All the good stuff.
So until next time, keep experimenting, and most importantly, have fun with it.